Did you know? MIT students can become certified pirates. A man survived getting hit by a train going 110 miles per hour, and a baseball fan was hit twice by consecutive foul balls. Hit that subscribe button to stay connected. In today's video, we've got 30 mind-blowing facts that will absolutely astonish you. So, grab a seat and get ready to have your mind blown. Let's jump right in. Number 1. Medieval Italians fought a war over a bucket. Medieval Italy wasn't a unified country. It was a collection of rival city-states that rarely got along. Bologna and Modena were two such neighboring city-states that supported opposing political factions. Tensions had been simmering for decades, occasionally breaking out into border clashes, when in 1325, some Modenese soldiers snuck into Bologna and stole a bucket from the main city well. The resulting War of the Bucket had only one battle, the Battle of Zappolino, but Modena was the victor. Nearly 700 years later, the bucket remains there still. Number 2. Some lily pads can support the weight of a small child. Lily pads seem like delicate things floating across the surface of the water. Even the Victoria amazonica, the world's largest lily pad, is very susceptible to puncture if you drop a sharp object into it. However, because of the leaves' spectacular size up to 3 meters or 9.8 feet, if you distribute weight evenly across the Victoria lily pad, it can support up to 71 pounds. In this hypothetical situation, you'd need to lay a sheet of plywood across it first, but then you could set a young child on it, as though it were an inflatable raft. Number 3. A pound of quarters and a pound of dimes are essentially worth the same amount, and that amount is about $20. A dime weighs 2.22 grams, and a quarter weighs 5.67 grams. That means that a pound of dimes would be roughly 200 dimes, or $20, and a pound of quarters would be roughly 80 quarters, or $20. Number 4. First ever moon cave discovered. Scientists have discovered a cave on the moon for the first time, which is about 100 meters deep. Cave scientists say it could be a perfect place for humans to establish a permanent base. According to research, it could be one of the hundreds of caves in the underground unknown world. Helen Sherman, the first British astronaut, says that caves could be the perfect place for humans to set up a base, saying that in the next 20 to 30 years, humans may be living in craters on the moon. Number 5. The current American flag design earned a bad grade. For anyone under 60, the American flag has always had the same iconic design, 50 stars and 13 stripes. However, the United States didn't include 50 states until Hawaii joined in 1959, necessitating a new flag design. High schooler Robert G. Heft submitted such a design as part of a class assignment. And though he wasn't the only one to suggest the alternating rows of 5 and 6 stars, he was the only one who actually sent in a prototype. President Dwight D. Eisenhower chose Heft's flag to become the official national symbol, but his teacher only gave it a B. Number 6. Forcing a smile. Actually makes you happier. Even if you're down in the dumps, putting a smile on, even if you don't feel like it, can literally trick your brain into thinking there's something to smile about, which then will improve your mood. There's even a study done that used Botox injections to literally keep people's muscles from being able to frown, and they were markedly happier than the control group that did not have the injections. Smiling doesn't just improve your mood, it also improves your heart rate, immune system, and general well-being. So go ahead, fake it till you make it, even on the worst days. Number 7. Books published in Norway are bought by the government to stock the country's libraries. All books must first go through quality control, and 1,000 copies are purchased and distributed by Arts Council Norway if they pass this step. If it's a children's book, 1,550 copies are purchased instead. Not only does this keep small publishing businesses afloat, but it's also of immense benefit for fledgling writers in Norway. Number 8. A husband once covered his entire property with flowers, so his blind wife could smell them. The Kurokis have been married over 30 years, running a dairy farm. Toshiyuki discovered the Shibazakura flower, a bright fuchsia flower with a wonderful smell. He wanted to explain and show this beautiful blossom to his wife Yasuko, but she had no sight, so he decided to plant the blossoms across the entire farm. The wonderful smells drew Yasuko out of her sickness-induced recluse and literally brightened her world. When they bloom, The entire place is covered in a bright fuchsia blanket of these blossoms, which tourists now flock to see, along with the Quirkies who still walk the grounds of their garden of love. Number 9. An ancient Egyptian mummy has a modern-day passport. When Pharaoh Ramses II died in 1213 BCE, his priests moved his body frequently from tomb to stave off grave robbers, so his mummy was in pretty bad shape by the 1970s. However, the reigning experts in mummy preservation lived in France, and the Egyptian authorities worried that the Europeans would simply keep the mummy. Anyone who's visited the British Museum knows this isn't an idle fear. To give Ramses some legal protection, Egyptian authorities issued him a passport, listing his occupation as king deceased. Fortunately, he was returned to Egypt safely and well preserved. Number 10. Medicinal whiskey prescriptions put Walgreens on the map. When Prohibition went into effect in the United States in 1920, Walgreens pharmacies numbered only 20, hardly a nationwide chain. However, there were a precious few legal ways to procure alcohol during that time, and a doctor's prescription was one of them. Doctors could make some extra money on the side by prescribing medicinal whiskey to their patients, and Walgreens was one of the few places that kept it in stock. By the end of the 1920s, there were more than 400 Walgreens stores across the country. Number 11. Underwater rugby is an international sport. If you've got 11 athletic friends and access to a pool, why not try underwater rugby? You'll need a ball full of salt water, so it doesn't float, and a pair of heavy buckets. Divide into 2 teams of 6 and pass the ball to your teammates in any direction, but don't let it come out of the water. Dunk it in your team's bucket to score a point. Since its invention in 1961 in Germany, underwater rugby has become a world sport, with a governing body featuring members from 21 countries, including the United States. Number 12. The word MacGyvered is in the Oxford English Dictionary. The original MacGyver series that ran from 1985 until 1992 featured a main character who could fashion pretty much whatever his heart desired with random objects. As a result, we've been using the word MacGyvered as an adjective meaning adapted or improvised in an ingenious or expedient way. And in March 2019, the term was officially added to the Oxford English Dictionary. It only took 34 years. Number 13. You can invent a 60-watt lamp without electricity. Since it refracts sunlight, you can only use this Moser lamp, named for its creator Alfredo Moser, during the day, but it can be a boon for simple homes without electricity. All you need to do is fill a 2-liter plastic bottle with water and add a little bleach to prevent algae from growing. You then drill a hole in your roof to access sunlight, but if you insert the bottle and then seal the opening, the room below will get about 60 watts of illumination while the sun is out. Number 14. Buttock-mail was a tax people once had to pay for having sex outside of marriage. Getting frisky before your wedding day was a big deal centuries ago. That's why in 1595, Scotland introduced Buttock-mail, which is a cheeky term for a Scottish poor law tax that people had to pay if they had sex outside of marriage. Number 15. Catnip repels mosquitoes. Though you may experience some difficulty wrestling it away from your cat, catnip contains an essential oil that is 10 times better at repelling mosquitoes than the active ingredient in commercial bug repellent. At high doses, catnip repels 49 to 59% of mosquitoes, while DEET, diethyltoluamide, repels only about 10% at the same dose. The problem with catnip oil, or nepetalactone, is that it loses potency quickly and is difficult to grow commercially. But researchers at Rutgers University are currently trying to develop new strains of the plant to fix these issues and potentially create a better bug spray. Number 16. King Charles's pottery goat has sold for £8,500. A Canadian named Raymond Payton kept this little clay goat for 55 years. It has now been auctioned in the UK. Raymond said, "I've been taking care of this goat all my life." He was given this clay goat on his 21st birthday by an elderly relative who worked as a cook at Cambridge University. If you're new here, hit the subscribe button so you make sure to never miss our videos. Number 17. Tuskless elephants are evolving in response to poaching. When a certain trait allows an animal to survive better in its environment, more offspring who share that trait will be born. In the case of elephants, those who've survived African poachers are those born without tusks, so they're the ones left to reproduce. The percentage of tuskless female African elephants has grown from around 3% to as high as 51% in Mozambique. Unfortunately for these animals, tusks aren't just ornamental. Elephants use them to build habitats and dig for water, so a tuskless generation could severely change broader elephant behavior. Number 18. A coffee taster's tongue is insured for more than $13 million. Costa Coffee might not be a household name in the United States, but in the United Kingdom, it's one of the most profitable coffee brands. It's so profitable, in fact, that the brand's head taste tester, Gennaro Pelliccia, has insured his taste buds with Lloyd's of London for the princely sum of £10 million, which is about $13 million. To put that in perspective, Lloyd's insures Bruce Springsteen's voice for only £3.5 million. Number 19. A proposed amendment to the US Constitution in 1916 would have had citizens vote on all acts of war. In 1916, the United States had not yet entered World War I, but all signs pointed in that direction. The proposed amendment was submitted to Congress, along with a signed petition by Nebraska residents, but was ultimately rejected. The proposed amendment also would have ruled that anyone who voted in favor of an act of war would have to sign up as an army volunteer. Number 20. Charles Darwin ate one of every animal he found. Primarily known for his theory of evolution, gleaned from observing animals in the Galapagos, Charles Darwin was not only a scientist, but an extremely adventurous eater. He belonged to his university's Glutton Club, which prided itself on eating the strangest meats its members could find. Later, on his voyages on the HMS Beagle, he sampled, among other things, puma, armadillo, iguana, giant tortoise, and lesser rhea. His favorite was an unnamed rodent, probably an agouti, which he described as the very best meat I ever tasted. Number 21. There's an earthquake-proof cathedral made of cardboard. In 2011, the city of Christchurch in New Zealand was struck by a massive earthquake. Many of the city's oldest buildings were destroyed, including Christchurch Cathedral. Anglican leaders wanted to create a temporary structure until something more permanent could be built. So they commissioned a Japanese architect who specializes in earthquake-proofing to design the building primarily out of cardboard. It's supported by timber and steel, but should another earthquake hit, this transitional cathedral is flexible enough to remain standing. It was the first major structure to go up as part of the city's rebuilding efforts. Number 22. A man survived getting hit by a train going 110 miles per hour. In 2013, a Michigan man named Darrell C. was walking along a set of train tracks, listening to music so loud that he didn't hear the oncoming train. The Chicago-bound train hit C straight on at 110 miles per hour, throwing him 20 feet, breaking bones, and crushing some of his vertebrae. Amazingly, though, he survived, needing surgery only to put a plate in his neck. The 22-year-old reportedly remembers nothing about the accident, and lifelong train engineers claim they've never seen anyone survive this kind of accident before. Number 23. The letter E used to signify a failing grade. Everyone knows that the letter F on a test means you failed. But have you ever wondered why the scores go A, B, C, D, and then skip E and go straight to F? Turns out, in the earliest record of a letter grade system, which was implemented at Mount Holyoke College in Massachusetts in 1897, an E used to mean you failed. But just 1 year later, it was changed to an F. That's because some professors worried that students would think E stood for excellent, whereas F more clearly meant fail. Number 24. The tea bag was invented by accident. Though many of us associate all things tea with the British, the portable tea bag was a purely American invention. Before 1908, tea only came in loose leaf form and needed to be steeped in a metal diffuser to brew. However, when a New York tea merchant sent out samples of his tea in small silk bags, some of his customers assumed that the bag could take the place of the diffuser, so they just dunked the whole thing in boiling water. The Brits turned up their noses at this American practice, until after World War II, when the portability factor won them over. Number 25. A lightning strike can form a tree shape on your skin. The scientific name for the branching tree-like shape of a lightning bolt is a Lichtenberg figure, a pattern that can be found wherever electricity discharges through non-conductive matter. Sometimes this pattern imprints on insulating materials like acrylic or wood, but it can also form on human skin. Some people who have been struck by lightning develop a rash in the shape of a tree where the bolt hit, bursting capillaries in the path of the electricity. Though the rash will fade, the person will bear the lightning signature on their skin for good. So that whole Harry Potter lightning bolt forehead thing was actually based in science. Number 26. MIT students can become certified pirates. If you're an undergraduate student at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, you've worked hard to get there, and you finally have a chance to fulfill your dream, becoming a pirate. Though the university doesn't offer a full major in piracy, if you pass courses in sailing, fencing, pistols, and archery, you can receive a certificate asserting your status as a scourge of the high seas. While the status was unofficial for nearly as long as the school has offered all the classes, MIT made it official in 2012, offering documentation to aspiring Anne Bonnies and Edward teachers. Number 27. One man created half of today's routine vaccines. The current recommended vaccine schedule for children includes 14 different vaccines spread out over childhood, and longer in some cases. A single scientist named Maurice Ralph Hilleman is responsible for an astonishing 8 of those 14 vaccines: measles, mumps, hepatitis A and B, chickenpox, meningitis, pneumonia, and a strain of bacteria called Haemophilus influenzae. He also discovered that chlamydia was caused by a bacterium, not a virus. You've probably never heard his name, but he's likely saved the lives of more children than any other single person in history. Number 28. Flushing the toilet after 10 p.m. is illegal in Switzerland. If you're in Zurich, Geneva, or Bern and need to use the toilet late at night, that's totally fine. Go ahead and do your business. Just don't flush when you're done. That's because it's illegal to flush the toilet after 10 p.m. in Switzerland. However, landlords can apparently interpret the law as they wish, so you might not end up in jail if you wake up to use the washroom in the middle of the night and are too sleepy to remember that flushing is forbidden. Number 29. Your dog might have Frito feet. Dog owners often encounter a number of unusual odors emanating from their beloved pets. But there's one in particular that's described as smelling like corn chips or old popcorn. Since it tends to come from their paws, it's been nicknamed Frito feet. The good news is that it's rarely an indication of a problem. It's simply a yeasty smell given off by bacteria that naturally live on a dog's paws. Regular bathing and trimming fur between your dog's foot pads will cut down on foot sweatiness and thus that weird corn chip odor. Number 30. A baseball fan was hit twice by consecutive foul balls. There's more protection for spectators these days, but every baseball fan knows there's still a small chance of a foul ball flying your way. During one Phillies-Giants game in 1957, Richie Ashburn fouled off a ball into the stands that smacked Alice Roth right in the face, breaking her nose. As the medics led her out in the stands, Ashburn hit another foul ball off the very next pitch, hitting Roth once again in the leg this time. Fortunately, she recovered, and the Phillies treated her and her family, per reports, like royalty. That's all for today. Subscribe to our channel for more fun videos.